This is Travis Wayne Goodsell, and we're going to go over the copper shop of the Smith family. Now, this is going to be some history that Mormons have never heard before, because the church doesn't want them knowing about it. When the Smiths moved to Palmyra, they were still poor. Joseph Smith Sr. did, however, resume attending the York Freemasonry. He cannot be a part of the same one that other family members are a part of. So he, having access to the horse, was able to travel to a different town to go to a Freemason lodge there. That's the Canandaigua. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's got Canada, but it's not spelled Canada. And then that was just south of Palmyra. And Hiram was right there in Palmyra, attending that one. And we know that they were attending those because we have the records from those lodges. They maintain the records of their members. Those who attend but do not become members are not listed, obviously. In order to become a member, you have to be approved by those who are at the same level or above. And so Hiram, not having access to a horse, got to stay in Palmyra. And then Joseph Sr. went south to the lodge down there, having access to a horse. Joseph Smith, therefore, did not have access to another horse to travel to another lodge in the area. They seem to have them in districts, from what I can see from the maps. Is that even though they didn't directly have districts, it was just certain towns were clustered into either the York Rites or the Scottish Rites. And so to the left and to the right, east and west of Palmyra, in that area, was Scottish Rites, for example. And it wasn't until after Joseph Smith Sr. Became a master mason that he then was offered the land just outside of Palmyra to the south on the way to his Freemason lodge. He was offered that land. Now, it did not have anything built on it. It was just the land, and it was owned by this particular company, and the guy gave Joseph Sr. the land to develop and use it as a farm to make money for him, more for himself, and he would just have to pay a tax type situation, a monthly payment for the use of the land. Joseph Smith Sr., however, failed to develop the land, and the company then foreclosed on the land. The Smiths were able to rent the larger home, the frame home, on the right side in the middle there of the map, and were able to stay there renting. But that was difficult because they were no longer allowed to develop the land anymore and grow crops for their own profit. And so as a result, what was developed on the land that you see here was what Joseph Smith Sr. had done with it during his time there. The apple orchard, the threshing barn, the copper shop, and then there's the log home on the north side, and fields, meadows, more fields, swamps, woodlot. So they had a pretty good setup here. And the reason why is because as a master mason, your fellow lodge members, especially other masons, were to help their fellow masons out when there's financial troubles. And Smith Sr., of course, was having financial troubles. And so for him to be granted a Master Mason status and getting the control of the not Canadian lodge to the south granted him special privileges as a Mason. It's illustrations of Masonry tells you all about it. The Master Mason is the one who runs the rituals, similar to the temple workers in the Mormon endowment, who get up and it's more prevalent in the Salt Lake Temple, where it's a live session, where they have a recording for the other temples. But you have the man who leads the session. That would be the same as the Master Mason. And the Master Mason leads the rituals and is a sort of leader in the community as well. Everything that goes on in the community is known to the Master Mason, and he is the one who directs the affairs of such situations, protecting the other Master Masons or other Masons, and helping the families in the community. And so when William Morgan in 1826 was arrested in the not Canadian township, Joseph Smith Sr. would have taken a senior role in overseeing that arrest, as William Morgan had been going around to the York lodges warning about the threat to America. And so Joseph Sr. would have known all about that and would have been involved in William Morgan's secreting out of the United States for his safety. And that's something that they don't tell you in the history books, because nobody does the thorough research. And so Smith was involved in that, and there are several examples that show that as well. But we're specifically talking about the copper shop. The copper shop was right across from the frame home that was eventually built, and below the apple orchard, and north of the threshing barn. And so it's along the road there, as the log home is up at the top, north of the picture. And the copper shop was thus built by Smith Sr. It was not there previously, as I mentioned. Nothing was there previously. Joseph Smith Sr. came in, developed the land, built a copper shop. Now, what did he use the copper shop for? You know, you could say, well, it was for tools, but you don't really make the tools out of copper. And so, what did he use the copper shop for? And the history, the church history says nothing about it. It doesn't even have it existing. And so, yeah, there is nothing about Smith Sr. Selling copper products to other people. This is where you need to put it in the context of what was going on. When the copper shop was built, this was the same time that Joseph Smith Jr. claimed to have been in possession of the brass plates. Or not the brass plates, sorry, the golden plates. Not gold plates, golden plates. If they were gold plates, they would have been, as people estimate, 200 pounds. There's no way Joseph Smith could be running around with 200-pound plates. I mean, yeah, they were farmers and buff and whatever, but no, not 200 pounds. I've got a 100-pound belly that I go running every morning with, and that's tough enough as it is. But no, not 200 pounds. And so copper is much lighter than gold, and so the plates, if they were copper, would have been around 50 pounds. Now this is significant because copper was used back then to make actual plates for the print press. You'd have an author who'd write on paper, and then that paper would have to be transferred to copper plates to then be given to the print press to put in a printer's plate. And so there's stages in book printing and publication. And so copper is for bookmaking as well as for other household items. But it's not a coincidence that a copper shop was put up at the time that Joseph Smith Jr. was talking about finding plates. And so what you then have as a history for the church is that Joseph Smith heads off to the southwest into Harmony, Pennsylvania, and is staying there, working. Well, he did go back to work with Josiah Stoll to dig for silver in the mine, but then he brought Martin Harris from Palmyra all the way out to Harmony, Pennsylvania, where Joseph was claiming to look into his hat of rocks and dictating the Book of Mormon to Martin Harris, and that, if you get the big picture in mind, when you understand Martin Harris was a member of the anti-Mason committee, and so the 116 pages, when you throw it into connection with William Morgan, who was a Mason, and the threat to America, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a children's book publisher to understand that what was actually going on. And I'll sum it up for you rather than telling you the whole facts, which you can get from my book, just so I can keep this video short, is that Joseph Smith was the distraction to get Martin Harris to pay for the Book of Mormon by thinking that he was helping in the making of it. And Oliver Cowdery and Joseph Smith Sr. were working in the copper shop making the plates with the William Morgan's documents that he was going to publish, exposing the threat to America. Martin Harris then caused a problem when he was uncomfortable with too much Freemasonry involved in it, destroyed the 116 pages. At that same time, Joseph Smith lost his first son with Emma, and that's when they went to the Methodist Church, and then they got kicked out because Joseph Smith had gotten arrested in 1826 for glass looking, which was what Martin Harris knew him to have been doing. And so it was sections 3 and sections 10 of the Doctrine and Covenants that are the first scriptures written. The other scriptures that came an earlier recording are actually 1838. And so the section 3 and section 10 are actually the oldest manuscripts that we have from the Smiths. And it's supposedly by Joseph Smith Jr., claiming that he's getting communication from Jesus Christ himself. But when you read over it under the context of history that I just told you about, it's Joseph Smith Sr. who's chastising his son, Jr., for messing up Jr.'s role in their plans with the book. And you can tell that they've already had been working on getting Sidney Rigdon to create a different framework for the book rather than using William Morgan's manuscripts. Instead, they were going to use Solomon Spaulding's manuscript that Sidney Rigdon had come by as he was in Pittsburgh, which was south of Harmony. And so that connection is how they knew of Sidney Rigdon, even though he was up in Ohio with his own church at that time when they went to go get him. And so there you have it, the Coppersmith shop there on the Smith family farm. And there's lots more to the story, obviously, and